this video, we'll prepare for NaNoWriMo together, from finding our idea, our premise, to working out some of the details of our characters, to starting a first draft of our outline. You ready? Let's go! Hey, I'm Megan. I'm a professional writer and project coordinator and 4-time winner of NaNoWriMo. 3 out of the last 4 nanos I've done, I've worked on projects that I started in previous nanos. But this year, I'm doing a brand new project and I'm super pumped. So I wanted to film a little prep with me video for 2 reasons. 1, so I can show you how I've prepped and hopefully give you some helpful tips. 2, so you can give yourself some dedicated time and space to actually do the prep yourself. So this video is going to have 3 sections, 1 for your premise, 1 for your characters, and 1 for your outline. First, I'll go into what you need to think about, and then I'll give you some dedicated time to work on each piece. To keep this video from being like 100 hours long, we're just going to do 10 minutes per section, but if you need more, you can rewind and watch the sessions over, or you can pause the video as you go. You'll need a notebook, paper, pen, pencil, laptop, whatever you use to write and brainstorm. Whenever you're ready, I'll see you at my desk. Let's get started. First things first, we're going to figure out a premise for our story. If you're like, what's a premise? I've made a video on that. It'll walk you through how to find one. But essentially, a premise is the lesson your character is going to learn by the end of your story. It gives your story focus and direction and makes it way easier to figure out who your characters are and how to make an outline. So for my story, I was sitting outside writing one morning when I got an idea for a scene where a woman is sitting by the edge of a lake thinking. A man comes up to her and asks her if she's ready to walk with him back across the field to the farmhouse for breakfast. They have a little bit of a back and forth. It seemed to me like they were friends, maybe old friends, who decided to be something more. So that was kind of the vibe I was getting, and then eventually she went back with him. So with this scene in mind, I'm going to start thinking about what lesson this character might need to learn. What I want to encourage you to think about is, if you don't have anything in mind, spend some time thinking about what kind of story you'd like to tell. What's something you believe is true about the world that you'd like to express in a story? Or what question are you wrestling with that you'd like to explore more? So we're going to take some time to think about that together. Let's try to hone the premise for our story so that we can build on that with characters and an outline. I'm going to put all the prompts you need on the screen. Take your time and pause the video if you need to. Okay, I think I managed to come up with a premise that I'm happy with. If you need more time, go back to the start of this work session or pause the video until you've come up with your own. Hopefully you were able to take the character, scene, or idea that you started with and put it into a concrete statement or lesson that you can use to frame your story. So for example, I decided my premise would be vulnerability and openness to the hardships of being human creates a deeper experience of the goodness of life. It's a little long, but I think it'll work. Basically, vulnerability and openness to hardship reminds us of what really matters. That's kind of going to be the premise I'm working with. What about you? If you were able to come up with one, let me know below in the comments. So now that you have a premise, you can work out some of the key characteristics of your main characters. First, of course, you have to think about what characters your story is going to have. So in mine, I know there's the main character, that girl who is sitting on the lake. I know there's the guy who came and talked to her. I get the sense that there's like an aunt figure at the farmhouse. Maybe cousins. Maybe she has a parent living. I'm not sure. But I can at least go from there with the three main characters that I think will be in the story. Her friend, and her aunt. So from there, I like to think about, okay, what do my characters think about the premise? So I literally start by listing all the characters that are coming to mind. Do they agree or disagree with the premise? To what extent? I already know that my main character, my MC, will disagree wholeheartedly, because she's the one that has to learn the lesson by the end. I also know that my MC's foil, who I think will be the guy that came up to her and started talking, will likely agree much more with the premise, because he has to kind of encourage her to accept the premise. And then from there, I think about the rest of them. Secondly, once you know how your characters feel about the premise, you can start thinking about why. Why do they agree or disagree to the extent that they do? Think about their physiology, sociology, and psychology. And if you want to go deeper into how to develop your characters, I've made a video on that you can check out too. But for example, when I think about why my main character might disagree with the premise so wholeheartedly at the beginning, things that come up for me are particularly her sociology and psychology. I always think about physiology and like what my characters look like kind of after the fact. I don't know why. But the thing that comes up for me with her is her sociology, so where she grew up, what kind of environment she grew up in. I kind of get the sense, maybe her immediate family was kind of closed off and weren't too interested in diving into emotions. They weren't very vulnerable. Maybe something happened in their life that's made them more closed off to those things. So I might start there and keep going. So as we work together, I want you to list out the characters you think will play a role in your story and figure out whether they agree or disagree with your premise. All right, so let's get into it. Okay, how did that go? So for me, I listed all the characters that I know of so far, and I was pretty much only able to figure out where they were on the scale of agreeing with the premise to not agreeing with the premise. So not a whole lot of depth in my characters right now, but it's a starting point for me. If you're working with a lot of characters, you probably need more time. You can always pause the video here or go back to the start of that session. But I'm hoping at least it gave you a good starting point to move forward from. Alright, so now we have a premise, we've got characters, and hopefully we know to what extent our characters agree or disagree with that premise. Now we can start working on a first draft of an outline. Even if you have no idea where your story is going, you can start an outline. Essentially, you want to start with a turning point. This is the point in the story where your character goes from rejecting the premise outright to considering that it may be true. So think about the premise that you chose and what kind of event might make your main character reconsider it. From there, you want to think about the events that may build up to the turning point, events that chip away at what your character thinks they believe. And then you think through the events that follow the turning point, that solidify the lesson your main character is going to learn, in other words, the premise. For the first draft of your outline, keep it really big picture. Then you can get more detailed in your second, third, fourth, however many drafts you want to do. Alright, so as we jump into this last session, let's think through our turning point, big picture events that might lead up to the turning point, and the events that might follow the turning point and solidify the premise for our main character. Again, I'll put all the prompts on the screen as we go. We'll have 10 minutes. Let's see what happens. Okay, how's it going? I hope you've been able to at least get a start on the big picture pieces of your outline. One of my points was literally, they have a conflict. That's all I wrote for that. So, the first draft of an outline is always the big picture, and then it can get more and more detailed. You can figure out what is that conflict as you go along. If you've got questions or got stuck anywhere as you were outlining, leave me a comment. I can help you work through it. Otherwise, that's a wrap on our Nano sessions today. Thank you so much for joining me, and I'll see you back in the other room. Alright, so I hope this video gave you some tools and time that you need to prep for NaNoWriMo. I'm so excited to hear how Nano goes for you. Feel free to find me on Instagram at Megan McLean. We can cheer each other on as we take on the challenge. And if you want to follow along as I upload vlogs and writing sprints during November, hit the like and subscribe buttons, and I'll see you next week. Good luck!